The first thing Princess Salith felt when she heard the news was silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy silence that pressed against her thoughts and made it hard to breathe. The council chamber was still speaking, voices layered with formality and caution, but their words no longer reached her clearly. One sentence echoed again and again in her mind. The marriage treaty has been finalized. She sat perfectly still, her posture flawless as tradition demanded, her expression calm as she had been trained since childhood. Inside, her thoughts raced. Of all the alliances discussed, of all the political paths the conquered had prepared for, this was the one she had hoped would remain only a rumor. Humans. The very word carried weight across the galaxy. Humanity was not the largest empire, nor the oldest. They did not possess the most advanced technology or the grandest fleets, yet they were feared in a way no other species was. Feared not for what they claimed, but for what they refused to lose. Princess Salith was heir to the Virelian conquered, a civilization built on balance, negotiation, and long memory. Wars were avoided when possible. Compromises were respected. Honor was shared, not demanded. For centuries, the conquered had survived by bending instead of breaking. Humans did not bend. That was what frightened her most. The council speaker finally finished, his voice smooth and controlled. This union will bring stability to the outer sectors. Humanity has agreed to withdraw its fleets and recognize our borders. In return, we recognize theirs and seal the bond through royal marriage. Salith inclined her head. That was all she was expected to do. No objections, no questions. The decision had been made long before she was informed. She was to marry a human. Not just any human, but the one whose name appeared most often in war reports, threat assessments, and emergency briefings. Commander Elias Ward, known among alien fleets by a title whispered with dread. The Ruthless one. No one knew where the title began. Some said it was because he never negotiated once a war started. Others claimed he destroyed enemy command structures so completely that resistance collapsed in days. Entire coalitions had broken apart after facing him, not because of brutality, but because of inevitability. Once humans committed under his command, they did not stop. Salith had seen the records, sparse images, distant scans, reports filled with numbers and cold analysis. Human ships were plain, angular, designed for function rather than beauty. No colors meant to impress. No ceremonial displays. They moved like tools, not ornaments. That frightened her more than cruelty ever could. As the council chamber emptied, Salith remained seated until protocol allowed her to leave. Only when she reached the quiet of her private quarters did the careful control finally crack. She stood by the wide crystal window, looking out at the layered lights of the capital city below. Towers of soft glow and drifting transit lanes filled the sky. It was beautiful. Ordered, peaceful, would it remain so? Her attendants waited nearby, silent and respectful. They had heard the rumors long before the announcement. Everyone had. When a species like humanity paused its advance, it was never without reason. Salith closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. She had been taught that duty came before fear, that a ruler's life was not their own. She understood that. She accepted it. But understanding did not make the unknown easier to face. What kind of being was she to marry? Stories varied wildly. Some claimed humans were physically weak but endlessly stubborn. Others said they were unpredictable, emotional, violent when provoked. There were tales of human soldiers fighting while wounded, of ships continuing combat after systems failure, of commanders choosing loss over surrender. Elias Ward stood at the center of all those stories, and now he was coming. The arrival was scheduled for 3 cycles later. 3 cycles for rumors to grow louder, for anxiety to spread through the palace, for Salith's imagination to fill the gaps with shadows. Every night she dreamed of a towering figure in dark armor, eyes cold and judging, seeing her not as a person but as a prize. On the day of arrival, the capital prepared itself carefully. The spaceport was cleared of civilian traffic. Defense arrays were placed on high alert, not because anyone expected an attack, but because humanity's presence demanded readiness. Diplomatic banners lined the approach lanes, symbols of peace and unity carefully arranged. When the human fleet arrived, it did so without announcement. No grand signals, no warnings. One moment the space beyond the station was empty, and the next it was filled with ships. They did not spread out aggressively. They did not form threatening patterns. They simply appeared, holding position with perfect spacing, their engines steady and quiet. Salith watched from the observation balcony as the fleet settled into orbit. Her heart beat faster despite herself. The ships were exactly as the reports described. Gray, unmarked except for simple identification codes. No decorative elements, no attempt to appear impressive. It was like looking at a wall of tools waiting to be used. The main vessel detached and moved toward the docking ring. The silence in the chamber grew thick. Even the most experienced diplomats stood rigid, eyes fixed on the approaching human ship. Salith felt a strange sensation then, not fear exactly, but anticipation. A sense that something important was about to shift. When the docking clamps engaged, the sound echoed softly through the station. Final, certain, protocol required her to stand at the front of the welcoming delegation. She did so, her ceremonial robes flowing around her, her posture perfect. Her attendants took their places behind her. The doors to the docking corridor remained sealed. She had imagined this moment countless times, the doors opening, the monster stepping through. The doors slid apart. What emerged was not what she expected. The human was tall but not towering, broad-shouldered, yes, but not exaggerated. He wore a simple uniform, dark in color with minimal markings. No weapons were visible, no armor. His hair was short and dark, his face lined not with scars but with fatigue. His eyes moved calmly across the chamber, assessing without hostility. He stopped several steps inside, removed his gloves, and inclined his head slightly. Princess Salith felt her breath catch. This was the Ruthless one. He looked human, ordinary in a way that was unsettling, no dramatic presence, no visible menace, just a man who carried himself with quiet confidence. Behind him came a small escort. They moved with controlled ease, spreading just enough to observe without crowding. Their eyes missed nothing. Salith noticed that detail immediately. The human stepped forward again, stopping at the proper distance. He spoke in clear, careful Concord standard. Princess Salith of the Virelian Concord, I am Commander Elia's ward, thank you for receiving me. His voice was calm, respectful, there was no hint of arrogance. Salith managed to respond, her training taking over. You are welcome in our territory, Commander Ward. Their eyes met briefly. She had expected coldness. Instead, she saw focus, weariness, and something else she could not immediately name, regret perhaps. As the formal greetings continued, Salith observed him closely. He followed protocol precisely, no more, no less. When others spoke, he listened fully. When he answered, his words were direct and honest, without embellishment. There was no attempt to dominate the room. That unsettled her even more. During the procession through the palace corridors, she walked beside him as tradition required. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy with unspoken understanding. Finally, he spoke quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I know this is not easy. Salith glanced at him, surprised. You assume much, Commander. He did not look offended. I assume only what the situation suggests. They continued walking. I want you to know, he added, that this arrangement was not my request. She stopped for a fraction of a second before resuming her pace. Nor was it mine, he nodded once. Then at least we begin with honesty. That simple statement lingered in her thoughts. As the day continued with meetings, ceremonies, and formal meals, Salith found herself watching Elia's ward more than anyone else in the room. She expected signs of cruelty or aggression. She saw none. What she saw instead was control. He never raised his voice. Never interrupted. When discussions grew tense, he remained calm, grounding the room rather than provoking it. Other humans deferred to him without hesitation, not from fear but from trust. That realization made her uneasy. Fear could be understood, trust was harder to measure. As night fell and the human delegation retired to their quarters, Salith returned to her room alone. She stood once more at the window, looking out at the city lights. The monster she had feared did not exist, but whatever stood in his place might be far more dangerous. Because for the first time since hearing the news, she realized something that unsettled her deeply. If this man truly was the one who had earned humanity's fearsome reputation, then the galaxy had misunderstood the nature of its greatest threat. And so had she. The next morning arrived with soft palace light and a quiet tension that seemed to settle into every corridor. Princess Salith woke before her attendants, though she had barely slept. Her mind had replayed the previous day over and over. The docking, the doors opening, the calm human voice, the tired eyes that did not match the galaxy's stories. She had expected fear to be her only companion. Instead, something else had joined it: confusion. The Concord's palace was built for ceremony and patience. Its halls were wide, its floors smooth, its windows designed to show the city like a living jewel. Everything here reminded visitors that the Virelians were refined and stable. No one rushed in these halls. Even anger was expected to be graceful. Humans did not belong in such a place, Salith told herself. And yet, when she reached the morning council chamber, there they were, standing like they had always belonged. Commander Elias Ward waited with his team near the room's center. He wore the same simple uniform as before, clean and sharp, with only a few small markings that likely meant rank or unit. His people stood around him in relaxed positions, but Salith noticed the truth beneath that relaxed posture. They were watching everything. It was not obvious in a dramatic way. They did not glare, they did not rest their hands on weapons. It was subtler than that. They stood where they could see entrances. Their eyes moved in short patterns, scanning and returning. When palace guards walked past, the humans did not react with disrespect, but their attention tracked the movement anyway, like trained hunters who had learned to be polite. Salith took her seat at the council table, and the session began. The Concord's diplomats spoke of trade lanes, border stations, mutual patrol schedules, and protocol adjustments. They were careful and calm, but everyone knew these details were not the true problem. They were a cover. A way to talk without saying the words that weighed on everyone's mind. Marriage. Salith kept her gaze steady, her expression neutral. She listened to each paragraph and each proposal, but a part of her attention stayed fixed on Elias Ward. He spoke only when asked. When he did speak, his answers were short and clear. When the Concord offered a patrol limit near disputed space, he agreed. When they suggested a joint inspection team, he accepted but added one condition: clear communication. No hidden orders, no silent changes. Confusion creates accidents, he said calmly. Accidents create wars. A Concord elder tried to challenge him gently, suggesting that uncertainty is the nature of diplomacy. Elias met the elder's gaze without hostility. Uncertainty is the nature of politics, not operations. His tone did not rise. He simply stated a fact, like someone who had seen the cost of confusion with his own eyes. Salith found herself gripping the edge of the table for a moment before forcing her fingers to relax. It was strange. She had expected the human commander to be reckless. Instead, he sounded like a person who feared war more than anyone else in the room. Or maybe, she thought, he feared the wrong kind of war. After the meeting ended, protocol required a guided tour of a cultural wing of the palace. The Concord believed in showing history, in reminding allies and rivals alike that they were ancient and wise. Salith led the human group through halls filled with art and memory crystals. Some items were simple, old carvings, faded maps. Others were complex, showing moments from past treaties. Elias walked beside her silent. He did not touch anything. He did not laugh or make careless comments. He looked with genuine focus, like he was actually trying to understand. Salith stopped near a long display of thin, curved blades used in old ritual duels. The blades were beautiful, delicate, made more for symbolism than killing. "Your people do not duel," Salith said, more as an observation than a question. Elias studied the blades. "Not like that." "How then?" she asked. He paused as if choosing words carefully. "Humans argue, sometimes we fight, but duels, no, too personal, too much pride." Salith blinked. "You say that as if pride is dangerous." Elias finally glanced at her. "It is." They moved on, and Salith felt the weight of those words settle in her mind. Pride is dangerous. She knew that in a moral sense, but he spoke like a commander describing a weapon. In the next hall, a memory projection played silently. It showed a treaty signing from centuries ago. Two species had ended a war with gifts, gestures, shared symbols. The Concord's leaders had smiled and bowed. Salith noticed Elias' expression tighten slightly, then relax again. "You dislike our ceremony," she said, surprising herself with the directness. Elias looked back at the projection. "No, I respect it." "But," Salith pressed. He took a breath. "Ceremony can hide fear. It can hide lies. Humans prefer to see the truth plain." Salith felt her throat tighten. "And what truth do you see here?" He turned fully toward her then, his eyes steady. "That your people have paid for peace many times." Salith did not know how to respond to that. She had expected mockery. Instead, she felt seen. Before she could speak, one of the Concord's officers approached, calling her attention to a separate obligation. She nodded, excused herself, and stepped away with her attendants, leaving the humans to continue the tour. As she walked, Salith's chief attendant, Lyris, leaned close. "Princess," she murmured, "the court is restless. They are watching everything. They expected a monster. Some are disappointed. Others are afraid for a different reason." Salith kept her eyes forward. "What reason?" Lyris hesitated. "They cannot predict him." That was true, and prediction was comfort. Unknown things made even proud leaders behave like nervous children. Later, after the afternoon meal, Salith received a message that Elia's ward had requested a private conversation with her. Formal, witnessed by one neutral recorder, but away from the main council. Her first reaction was a spike of tension. Her second was annoyance at herself for reacting that way. He had done nothing threatening. He had been respectful, precise, controlled. Still, she could not forget the title he carried. The Ruthless one, Salith agreed. The meeting took place in a small garden room that overlooked an inner pond. The air smelled of soft flowers and clean stone. The only sound was water moving gently and distant city hum. Salith sat across from Elias at a low table. A neutral palace recorder sat at a distance, head down, ready to record only what protocol allowed. Elias began without delay. "Princess, I requested this because I want clarity." Salith tilted her head slightly. "On what matter?" "The marriage," he said, as if speaking the word cost him effort. Salith's spine stiffened. "Clarity is simple. My council has decided." Elias' face remained calm, but his eyes lowered for a moment. "I know, and my government has decided as well." Salith waited. He looked up again. "That does not mean you have no choice." Salith almost laughed, but the sound never came. "You are joking." He shook his head. "I am not. There are consequences, yes, political damage, risk. But humans do not. We do not force a person into a vow like this if they refuse." Salith's breath slowed. This was not what she expected. "Then why agree at all?" she asked carefully. Elia's jaw tightened just slightly. "Because my government believes this is the cleanest way to end the border threat. They believe you will be safer if our alliance is personal, visible, hard to break." Salith narrowed her eyes. "And you?" Elias did not answer right away. He looked out at the pond, the water reflecting pale light. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "I have spent my life trying to prevent wars from lasting. I have seen what long wars do, to soldiers, to civilians, to leaders. It changes the mind, it changes the soul. People become less human, less themselves." Salith's heart beat harder. She did not understand all of human emotion, but she understood pain. "So you accepted this," she said, "to avoid another war?" Elias nodded once. "Yes." Salith found her voice quieter now. "And what do you want from me, Commander?" His gaze returned to her. "Honesty, that is all. If you fear me, say it. If you hate this, say it. I will not pretend this is romantic or easy. I will not lie to you to make things smoother." Salith stared at him. She had expected manipulation. She had expected charm or threat. She found neither, just a blunt request for truth. "I feared you," Salith admitted, the words tasting strange. "I feared what you might be, what you might want." Elias did not flinch. "And now," Salith hesitated. "Now I fear what you are for different reasons." His brow lifted slightly, like he was asking permission to hear more. "You do not act like a conqueror," Salith said. "You act like someone who has already seen conquest and found it empty." Elias' eyes darkened, but not with anger, with memory. Salith continued, carefully choosing simple words. "If you are the one they call ruthless, then your ruthlessness is not cruelty. It is something colder, something disciplined." Elias exhaled slowly. "That's a fair description." Salith leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, why do they call you that, truly?" The recorder's head remained down. Even the air seemed to hold still. Elias' hands rested on the table, fingers still. "Because when my enemy makes war unavoidable, I make sure they cannot do it twice." Salith's skin cooled. "Explain." He spoke plainly, without pride. "I do not destroy because I enjoy it. I destroy the ability to continue, ships, fuel, command, communications. The things that keep a war alive." Salith swallowed. "And if those things are defended by people?" Elias met her gaze evenly. "Then those people should not have been placed there." The words were hard but not hateful. That was what made them frightening. Salith's mind flashed to conquered ideals, to careful limits and moral lines. Yet she could not deny the cold logic. Wars did not end because both sides felt satisfied. They ended when one side could no longer continue. Elias leaned back slightly. Princess, I won't paint myself as gentle. I've ordered strikes. I've watched fleets die. I've lived with those choices. Salith whispered, and you still sleep. For the first time, Elias' calm expression cracked just a little. His eyes tightened. Not well, silence returned. The sound of water became louder. Salith found herself studying him again and seeing what she missed before. The fatigue was not only physical. His calm was not comfort. It was armor. Not armor made of metal, but armor made of control. A person like this, she realized, was dangerous not because he was wild, but because he was steady. Why are you here personally? Salith asked. Could they not send another diplomat to stand for the marriage? Another figure? Elias gave a small, humorless smile. They tried. Your council refused, Salith stiffened. Why? Because both sides know symbols matter, Elias said. If this is to hold, it must be real, visible, no substitutes. Salith's eyes narrowed. And your government chose you because you are a weapon. Elias did not deny it. Because the galaxy already believes I am one. Salith leaned back slowly, her thoughts twisting. A marriage not just as alliance, but as a warning. A message to rivals. If you threaten this bond, you face the commander who ends wars fast. And her role in it was not just princess. She was a shield, or a leash, or both. Her anger rose, but she forced it down, knowing anger would not help. Instead, she asked the question that mattered most. If I refuse, would you accept it? Elias' gaze held hers. Yes. Salith blinked. Even if it starts another war. Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, quiet but firm. If you refuse and war happens, the war will be because leaders choose it, not because you made a human unhappy. Salith felt something in her chest loosen. Not trust, not yet, but a small crack in the fear. The meeting ended soon after. Elias stood, inclined his head in the same respectful way as before, and left without trying to continue the conversation or force anything more. Salith remained seated, staring at the pond. When she finally rose and returned to her quarters, the palace felt different. Not safer, not calmer, but clearer. She understood the shape of the human threat now, and it was not a monster hiding under a bed. It was a knife placed on the table, clean, sharp, and honest about what it was. That evening, a formal dinner was held in the human delegation's honor. High court nobles attended, along with military advisors and trade officials. The palace used every decorative tool it had: soft music, glowing wall patterns, gentle perfumes in the air, rare foods presented like art. Humans, Salith noticed, did not react much. They tasted the food politely. They nodded at compliments. They spoke in calm tones. They did not drink heavily. They did not flirt. They did not show weakness. The court had expected something dramatic from a feared species. They were not given it. Salith watched as nobles whispered among themselves. Some looked insulted by the humans' lack of visible awe. Others looked unsettled. Halfway through the meal, an elderly noble leaned toward Salith and spoke quietly. Princess, he is too calm, too controlled. That is what predators do when they enter a new environment. Salith kept her face smooth. Perhaps. Or perhaps he is simply disciplined. The noble's eyes narrowed. Discipline is just controlled aggression. Salith did not reply. She could not fully disagree. Across the table, Elias was speaking to a conquered defense advisor. Salith could not hear every word, but she caught phrases. Shared response time. Avoid confusion. If something happens, we need joint authority. He spoke like someone who expected something to happen. Salith's instincts sharpened. Why would he expect trouble here in the heart of conquered territory? Unless humans always expected trouble, or unless he had information she did not. After the dinner, tradition required a short walk through a starlit corridor garden. Salith and Elias walked side by side again, separated from others by a respectful distance. You think something is coming, Salith said quietly. Elias' eyes stayed ahead. I think something always comes. That is not an answer, Salith said. Elias gave a small nod, acknowledging the truth. Then I'll give a better one. Your alliance with us changes the balance. Someone will test it. They always do. Salith's pulse quickened. Who? Elias did not answer immediately. We have indications. A rival coalition has been moving ships near your outer relay stations. Salith's throat tightened. Near our space? Yes, he said. Close enough to be seen, far enough to claim it means nothing. Salith frowned. That is a threat. It's a question, Elias corrected. They're asking if we'll respond, if we're soft because we're talking peace. Salith felt anger flare. We are not soft. Elias finally looked at her. His gaze was steady. I know. That simple statement hit her harder than she expected. Most outsiders saw the conquered as delicate. Elias did not. He saw them as survivors, people who had chosen diplomacy not because they were weak, but because they were tired of blood. Salith swallowed. "What will you do if they strike?" Elias' voice did not change. "I will protect my people." "And mine?" Salith asked. Elias held her gaze for a long moment. "If the alliance is real, then yours become mine too." A chill ran through Salith, and she did not know if it was comfort or fear. The next day brought a shift in the palace mood. Messages arrived from border stations. Patrol reports showed unknown ships lingering at the edges of conquered space. Not within firing range, but close enough to be unmistakable. The council tried to keep calm. They issued formal warnings. They requested clarification. They prepared emergency response teams quietly, hoping the problem would fade. Humans did not hope. Salith saw it in the way Elias' people moved. Small changes. A guard repositioned near a door. A human aide spoke into a communicator for a few seconds, voice low and tight. Their calm remained, but it was a calm that now felt like a locked door. Salith was called into a smaller strategy room that afternoon. Present were the Conquered's defense leaders, several senior diplomats, Elias Ward, and 2 human officers. A holographic map floated above the table, showing the outer sectors. Small lights indicated fleets and stations. A cluster of unknown markers sat near one of the Conquered's key relays. The Conquered defense leader spoke first. "They remain outside our jurisdiction. They claim they are conducting navigation exercises." One of the human officers let out a quiet breath that might have been laughter, but he held it back. Salith noticed Elia's glance at that officer just once. The officer stopped immediately, face blank again. Elias spoke calmly. "They are not exercising, they are positioning." The defense leader stiffened. "You speak as if you are certain." Elias pointed to the map. "Their pattern is not random. They are aligned with your relay's approach angles. They want the ability to hit it fast." A diplomat frowned. "Why would they strike a relay? That would be an act of war." Elias' eyes did not move from the map. "Because they don't want war, they want fear." Salith felt her blood cool. Elias continued. "If they damage your relay and you do nothing, you look weak. If you respond too strongly, you look unstable. They will then offer protection to your border worlds, claiming the Conquered cannot defend them." One of the Conquered leaders hissed softly. "Political invasion." Elias nodded. "Exactly." The room fell silent. Salith realized then that the humans did not simply fight wars. They understood them. They understood pressure. They understood how enemies thought. The defense leader asked, "What do you propose?" Elias' reply came without hesitation. "We show them the alliance is real." The diplomat stiffened. "With a threat." "With a presence," Elias said. "A joint patrol, visible, firm, no weapons aimed, no insults. Just a message: if you touch that relay, you face both of us." Salith watched the Conquered leaders exchange glances. They feared escalation. They feared being dragged into human methods, but Salith saw another truth. If they did nothing, they would invite more testing. She spoke before she could second-guess herself. "A joint patrol is reasonable." All eyes turned to her. Salith kept her voice calm. "If we are to present unity, we must act united, not only in words." Elias looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like approval in his expression. Not praise, just respect. The council agreed, though reluctantly. Orders were sent. Conquered ships prepared. Human ships adjusted orbit. As the meeting ended, Salith remained behind for a moment, staring at the map. The unknown markers pulsed softly like distant eyes. Elias stepped closer. "You did well," he said quietly. Salith did not look at him. "Do not patronize me." "I wasn't," Elias said. "You chose action over comfort. That matters." Salith finally looked at him. "Is this what you do, always move first?" Elias' gaze was steady. "Not first, just not last." Salith opened her mouth to respond, but a palace officer rushed in, breath quick, posture stiff with urgency. "Princess," the officer said, voice controlled but strained. "We have received an emergency transmission from Relay Station 9. Salith's heart dropped. "What happened?" The officer swallowed. "An unidentified force has launched a strike. The relay is damaged. Communications are unstable." And he hesitated as if the next words were heavier. "And what?" Salith demanded. The officer turned his tablet slightly to show the incoming message. A short clip played, static-filled, showing sparks, dark smoke, crew members running through a corridor. Then a voice cracked through the interference. They hit us fast, came out of nowhere, multiple boarding pods. The image shook and the clip ended abruptly. Silence slammed into the room. Salith felt her body go cold, then hot. Her mind snapped into focus. Her people were under attack, not rumor, not politics, real danger. Elias' voice cut through the shock like a blade. Calm, controlled, immediate. Lock down the palace, he ordered to his officers, then turned to the conquered leaders. Get me direct access to your fleet command, now. A diplomat stammered, Commander, we must consult. Elias' eyes lifted, and Salith saw the shift. Not rage, not cruelty, something sharper, a calm that no longer belonged to negotiation. Consultation happens after we stop the bleeding, he said. Salith stepped forward, voice steady despite the storm in her chest. Give him access? The room froze for half a second. Then the defense leader nodded sharply, and palace systems opened secure channels. Elias' communicator chimed as his fleet acknowledged. Salith watched him stand there, still, quiet, deadly focused, and understood at last why the galaxy whispered his title. Not because he was loud, not because he enjoyed fear, but because when the moment arrived, he did not hesitate at all. And somewhere out there in the dark beyond their beautiful capital, someone had just made the mistake of proving the human warnings true. The relay was hit, the alliance was being tested, and the Ruthless one had finally been given a reason to move. The alarms did not scream. They chimed. That alone told Salith something was wrong. The Conquered's warning systems were designed to keep calm. No sharp sounds, no panic tones, even danger was meant to arrive politely. The soft chime echoed through the palace halls, steady and controlled, but beneath it was urgency that could not be hidden. Relay Station 9 was no longer responding. Salith stood in the command chamber as the full report came in piece by piece. The relay was damaged, not destroyed. External communications were unstable. Internal power was failing in sections. Unknown forces had boarded the station, then vanished before Conquered security teams could regroup. No demands had been made, no claims of responsibility. That made it worse. The Conquered defense leaders argued in tight, worried voices. Some demanded caution, others wanted to seal borders and wait. A few insisted on formal warnings before action. Their words layered over each other, each rooted in fear of escalation. Salith listened, but her attention stayed on Elias' ward. He stood slightly apart, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The calm he carried during meetings was still there, but it had sharpened. It was no longer the calm of diplomacy. It was the calm of action. Time since last transmission? Elias asked. 7 minutes, a Conquered officer replied. We believe the attackers disengaged immediately after the strike. Elias nodded once. They wanted confusion, not control. A diplomat snapped speculation. Elias turned his head slowly. Experience? Salith stepped forward. Commander, what is your assessment? Every eye turned to her. Some were surprised she asked him directly. Others were relieved. Elias did not rush his answer. This was a test. They struck a vital point that is hard to defend but easy to deny responsibility for. They boarded to gather data or plant devices, then withdrew. Withdrawn to where? The defense leader asked. Elias tapped the display. A small cluster of unknown ships blinked faintly beyond the relay's sensor range. There. The room fell quiet. They are close enough to strike again, Elias continued, but far enough to claim innocence. They want you frozen, afraid to move. Salith clenched her hands. And if we do nothing? They escalate, Elias said, slowly, carefully, until your border worlds lose faith in you. One of the elders hissed. That is political warfare. Yes, Elias agreed, which becomes real war when someone bleeds. The defense leader rubbed his face. What would you do? Elias looked at Salith, not the leader. I would secure the relay, I would make sure your people know they are not alone, and I would show our enemy that uncertainty cuts both ways. Salith felt her pulse steady. Then do it. The defense leader stiffened. Princess, I am aware of the risks, Salith said firmly. Relay Station 9 is Conquered territory. Our citizens are there. We will not abandon them. Elias inclined his head slightly. Then I request permission to lead the response. Silence stretched. Salith met the defense leader's gaze. Granted. The order went out. Within minutes, the palace command chamber became a storm of controlled motion. Conquered ships launched from orbital docks. Human vessels adjusted formation with silent precision. Data streams flowed between fleets faster and more open than Conquered systems normally allowed. Salith noticed the change immediately. Human communication was direct. No layers, no ritual phrasing. Commands were short and clear. Coordinates, timing, intent, no wasted words. Elias moved to a command station, fingers gliding across controls with ease. He did not raise his voice. He did not repeat himself. His officers responded instantly, each already knowing their role. Salith stood near him, watching the relay grow larger on the display as their joint force moved through space. "What will you do if they return?" she asked quietly. Elias did not look away from the screen. "Stop them," Salith hesitated. "Without escalation." Elias' jaw tightened just a fraction. "Princess, escalation is not volume, it's direction," she frowned. "Explain." "If we strike wildly, that's escalation," Elias said. "If we strike exactly where needed, that's correction." Salith did not fully understand, but she sensed the truth in his tone. Humans thought in angles she was still learning. As they approached Relay Station 9, damage reports became clearer. External armor was scorched. One docking ring was partially destroyed. Power fluctuations continued. Conquered security teams were regrouping, but confusion slowed them. Elias spoke into the channel. "Relay 9, this is Joint Command. Human and Conquered forces are inbound. Hold position. We are coming." Static crackled, then a weak voice replied. "Copy, systems unstable, internal sensors compromised." Salith's throat tightened. These were her people. Elias' expression did not change, but his voice softened just slightly. "You did well. Sit tight." Human boarding teams prepared silently. Their armor was simple, dark, designed for movement rather than display. Conquered Marines stood nearby, their gear more ornate but equally functional. Salith watched both forces side by side. Different styles, same readiness. The joint fleet took up position around the relay. Human ships moved first, forming a wide perimeter. Conquered vessels filled in behind them, protected by the humans' placement. One of the conquered officers frowned. "They're shielding us." Salith saw it too. Human ships took the forward angles, the most likely approach paths. They did not announce it, they just did it. Elias gave quiet orders. "No pursuit, no provocation, we secure the station, nothing else." "What if they fire?" an officer asked. Elias' eyes flicked up. "Then they answer for it." Boarding teams launched. Salith followed the operation through live feeds. Human teams moved with speed and silence, clearing corridors methodically. Conquered teams followed, securing and assisting crew. There was resistance, but brief. A few automated defenses triggered, then shut down. No drawn-out fights, no chaos. Salith expected violence. She saw efficiency instead. In one feed, a human team encountered a damaged corridor where conquered technicians were trapped behind debris. Without hesitation, the humans shifted formation. One provided cover. Two lifted the debris with mechanical assistance. The technicians were pulled free, shaken but alive. No cheers, no comments, just action. As teams swept the station, evidence emerged. Devices had been planted near communication cores, not bombs, listening systems. Tracking markers. "They were mapping us," a conquered analyst said. "Learning response times." Elias nodded. "Now they know." Salith felt anger rise. "They endangered lives just to watch us." "Yes," Elias said. "That's why we respond." The unknown ships lingered at the edge of the sensor range. They did not move closer. They did not retreat. Waiting, Elias studied their position. "They expect hesitation," Salith asked. "What do they get instead?" Elias' fingers danced across the controls. "Clarity." He opened a channel, broadcasting on open space frequencies. His voice was calm, measured, unmistakable. "This is Commander Elias Ward of the Human Defense Fleet. You have conducted an unauthorized strike on a civilian relay station under joint protection." There was no reply. "You will withdraw your vessels beyond this sector within 5 minutes," Elias continued. "Failure to do so will result in loss of operational capability." A conquered diplomat hissed softly. "You cannot issue ultimatums." Elias did not lower his voice. "This is not an ultimatum. It is information." Salith watched the countdown begin. 4 minutes. The unknown ships shifted slightly. No retreat, no attack. 3 minutes. The conquered leaders whispered urgently among themselves. Salith ignored them. 2 minutes. Salith's heart pounded, but she kept her face calm. She wondered if Elias felt fear like she did, if his calm hid something deeper. 1 minute. The unknown ships did nothing. The countdown reached 0. Elias did not hesitate. "Disable," he said. Human ships fired, not volleys, not barrages. Thin beams of focused energy struck precise points on the unknown vessels. Engines flared, then went dark. Communication arrays flickered and died. Weapons systems powered down without exploding. Within seconds, the hostile ships drifted, alive but helpless. No ships were destroyed. No lives were taken. Salith stared at the display, stunned. The conquered defense leader whispered, You crippled them. Elias nodded. They can limp home. They can tell their leaders what happened. A diplomat snapped, This is an act of war. Elias finally turned to face him fully. His eyes were cold now, but controlled. Number war would be destroying them. This is correction. Salith felt a chill run through her. She understood now. Humans did not escalate emotionally. They escalated structurally. As recovery teams stabilized Relay Station 9, conquered citizens began to realize what had happened. News spread quickly, not of destruction, but of protection. Human ships held position for hours, silent guardians in conquered space. Conquered crews worked freely, knowing they were covered. Salith received reports from border worlds, relief, gratitude, confidence returning. The Palace Council reconvened that evening. The mood had changed. Fear was still there, but it was no longer dominant. The defense leader spoke first. The relay is secure, no casualties, minimal damage. A diplomat added reluctantly, The hostile fleet has withdrawn. They are transmitting apologies. A soft ripple of disbelief passed through the room. Salith looked at Elias. They apologized? Yes, Elias said. They don't want further clarity. The elders exchanged glances. One spoke carefully. Commander Ward, your methods are effective. Elias inclined his head. They are designed to be. Salith stood. This meeting is concluded. As the room emptied, she remained behind with Elias. You did not destroy them, she said quietly. No, Elias replied. That would have taught the wrong lesson. Salith turned to face him fully. Which is? That fear ends alliances, Elias said, but respect keeps them. Salith searched his face. Is that what you want, respect? Elias considered the question. I want stability, respect helps. Salith exhaled slowly. You protected my people. Yes. Even before the marriage is finalized. Elias met her gaze. An alliance isn't a future promise, it's a present action. Something shifted inside her then, not trust, not love, but certainty. The galaxy had tested humanity. And humanity had answered, not with rage, but with precision. Later that night, Salith stood alone again at her window. The city lights felt steadier now, stronger. Her communicator chimed softly, a message from Elias. Relay crews are safe, your people held well. She stared at the words for a long moment before replying. Thank you. The response came almost immediately. You're welcome. Simple, direct, human. Salith realized something important then. The galaxy feared humans because they believed humans were monsters. The truth was far more unsettling. Humans were not monsters. They were guardians who decided very carefully where to draw the line, and once drawn, they did not let anyone cross it. Far beyond conquered space, the crippled hostile fleet limped away. Their commanders spoke in hushed, urgent tones. Data scrolled across damaged consoles, showing human firing patterns, response times, and coordination. One officer whispered, We misjudged them. Another replied, voice tight, No, we misunderstood them. The first officer swallowed. What do we tell our leaders? The commander stared at the stars ahead. We tell them this. If humans say something is protected, believe them. Back in the palace, Salith finally allowed herself to sit, truly sit and think. The marriage still waited. The future was still uncertain. But one thing was clear now. The Ruthless one did not destroy because he wanted to. He destroyed only the things that threatened what he chose to protect. And she, Princess of the Conquered, was beginning to understand what it meant to stand under that protection.